Chris.
And people will see. Yeah. You watch, you tell me what you think, Elizabeth.
I will. Have a good show.
All right. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. See the game of fringe minorities dominating politics. This is the Selective outrage edition. Is free speech under attack when tax dollars are pulled from Columbia University for allowing pro-Hamas protesters to harass and even assault Jewish students? Another question, how about when ICE tries to deport the campus protest negotiator Mahmoud Khalil? How about Trump putting 60 universities under investigation for anti-Semitic discrimination? And that they could have their funding pulled as a result. Now, the universities are going to argue you can't condition funding on particular speech, and that the funding, in Columbia's case, that they were getting has nothing to do with the protest policies. So one should not be connected to the other. The government will counter that they can lose funding for not honoring their duty as a university under Title VI to protect against anti-Semitism. Protests erupted over this today in Manhattan, even though Khalil's group said on the anniversary of October 7th, we support liberation by any means necessary, including armed resistance. In the face of violence from the oppressor, that's Israel, equipped with the most lethal military force on the planet, where you've exhausted all peaceful means of resolution, violence is the only path forward. Shows what they're learning in that school, right? The funding can be litigated, of course, but there's a larger question. Why do private universities, like the Ivy League, get so much government funding? Did you know how much they get? Columbia got $1.3 billion from us last year. One in every $5 that Columbia spent came from you. Yale, $899 million. Harvard, $686 million. Princeton, $456 million. Every one of these schools has tens of billions of dollars in endowments. It's outrageous, isn't it? That's what you should be looking into, Doji. But of course, the outrage that you see happening on Columbia campus is selective, meaning it's tailored to the pro-Palestinian agenda on the political left. Now, I'm not saying don't protest or that there's no cause. Gaza is a horror show. It's an embarrassment to all humanity. And Israel's biggest mistake to this point, and it's continuing to make it, and even making it more egregiously, is messing with aid. And they're doing it right now, even more so by cutting electricity. Now, Israel says they're trying to pressure Hamas, but we all know the innocents bear the brunt of the deprivation. And yet, as much as you can feel concern for these people, and should, they are not the only Muslim minorities that are getting oppressed, if you want to call it that are dealing with violence, even worse than what's happening there in terms of the cause, right? There is no October 7th precipitator in a lot of these other situations. I wonder, are they outraged on Columbia because the Jews are involved? Is the lack of outrage with the other groups because the Jews are not involved? For example, where are the protests about Syria? Where's AOC and the rest of the squad? There's a terror group in charge in Gaza, okay? What about what's happening in Syria? Syria is actual ethnic cleansing. 830 Alawite civilians, Alawites from Alawahi, which are a Muslim minority, right, of a Shia variety. They are Assad's supporters. So this guy Jelani, who's no longer in league with ISIS, is just doing exactly what ISIS would. Ethnic cleansing a minority that doesn't agree with their beliefs. 830 civilians killed in recent days, including women and children. There are reports of Sunni militants roaming house to house, wiping out entire families in summary executions and pillaging entire neighborhoods. Crickets. Crickets here. 1 million plus Uyghurs, the Muslim minorities in China, detained in re-education camps, then put into forced labor camps. Over 1 million. Forced sterilization. Children systematically separated from their families. And as one Chinese official said, the actions are to, quote, break their lineage, break their roots. Crickets. Why? Chinese are not as offensive and oppressive as the Jews. What about the Christians in the Congo? Islamist terrorists killing Congolese Christians in the eastern part of the country to create a Muslim caliphate. Thousands have been killed, thousands displaced. This past month, they rounded up 70, beheaded them in a church. In just the last 2 weeks, 895 rape cases. 895 rape cases reported to the UN. Crickets. Why? Selective outrage. Now, their best counter is, no. We care about Gaza particularly because the United States is financing the fiasco there. But that's weak sauce, okay? You either care or you don't. I would argue the lack of consistency points to political convenience. And before you applaud me for exposing the left, the right plays the same game. These two parties, as bad as they were to begin with, this binary battle to the bottom, they are now each co-opted by their fringe that are magnified minorities on social media. That's why so many of you don't even connect with these parties anymore. Two examples on the right, Ukraine and tariffs. When I was out of TV, I watched the left and right united by the blue and gold. Ribbons on trees all over the country, everybody wearing them. They're just like us, fighting an oppressor in Russia, just like we fought England. And then Trump comes back, reminds the ranks that he hates Zelensky for the perfect call that got him impeached. And suddenly, the right starts talking about Ukraine like it was Russia. Selective outrage based on political convenience. In their case, fealty to Trump. And on tariffs, the GOP for decades has opposed tariffs. Why? They're the party of free trade. Now, Trump says jump and they say how high? 68% of Republicans support tariffs on Mexico, 57% support tariffs on Canada, 61% support tariffs on the EU, 78% support tariffs on China. Listen, you want better trade deals? I'm with you. You want more stuff made here? I'm with you. But are you going to support those higher prices that come with the tariffs? Because the majority of goods that you purchase come from those same countries, and they are going to cost more. So you down with that too? You see, it's not thought through because it's about partisan advantage, not principle. And we know this because if it were about anything more than what works in the moment, what matters would not change as often as it does. Better to stick to the facts and demanding better outcomes. So let's do that, okay? Let's stay with this last example about the nature of our trade relationships and what it's going to mean specifically with Canada. Why? Because they just went through their own political shift to an outsider in Mark Carney. Okay, he replaced Trudeau as prime minister. Same governmental faction on the liberal side, a centrist basically, but is in favor of continuing retaliatory tariffs. So what does the change mean for the relationship with the United States? So this was Trump's urging, doesn't like the deal, starts a tariff war, at least talking about one with Canada and Mexico for the first time in like 200 years, right? So now we have strained relationships. Now there's a new leader in Carney, 86% of the Liberal Party vote. That's good. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say last night.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. My government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Anyway, let's bring in Kirsten Hillman, okay? She's Canada's ambassador to the U.S. and just hours ago had her first meeting with the new PM, who is their new Prime Minister. That's what PM means. Kirsten, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Just to say, he's not PM yet. He has to be sworn in the next day or two, but he's our PM-elect, if you will.
Do you think there's any chance it doesn't happen?
Sorry, I missed that.
Do you think there's any chance it doesn't happen?
Do I hope it doesn't happen?
No. Do you think he's not going to be sworn in, or do you think it's a fait accompli?
Oh, yeah, I know he will be sworn in. I apologize. We had a bit of an audio issue here. I can hear you now. Yes, he will absolutely
Yes, Ambassador,
be sworn in.
I want to know if you think Carney should get kicked out of office. That's my first question to you. No, Ambassador, here's what I want to know. In speaking to the PM-elect, what is your sense of his relative approach to Trump? Is he going to inherit the bitterness between Trump and Trudeau, or does Mr. Carney see a different way forward?
I think that Mr. Carney expressed his views publicly yesterday. I think that the relationship between the United States and Canada, between Canadians and Americans, is fundamental for both of us. Making sure that there is a good relationship between leaders and those who are working with the leaders is primary. And I know that he's going to put effort into making sure that he has the best relationship possible with President Trump. Relationships go two ways, right? So both sides have to be making that effort.
The axe that is being swung here on part of the administration is, look at how much higher Canada's tariffs are on us than ours are on them. It's not fair. Some of them are 200% when it comes to the dairy market. And we need a better deal. How do you want Americans to see those big numbers in context?
So thank you for that question. And I do think that we have to look at the facts here. So the first fact is, between Canada and the United States, under the USMCA, the deal that we negotiated under President Trump in his first term, Canada and the United States are 99% tariff-free. 99% of the tariffs are at zero. There are some sectors, in agriculture in particular, where both countries only allow a certain amount of product in. And then once that amount is reached, we put tariffs in place or other restrictions in order to make sure that our small family farms can have a share of the market. The United States does it in sugar, you do it in dairy, you do it in fruit, you do it in veg. We do it in dairy as well, and that's what those tariffs are. Last year, the U.S. sold 3 times as much dairy product to Canada as we sold to the United States. We're your number 2 customer. So we need to be honest about what's actually happening here. It is a deal. We struck that deal. Part of that deal was that both sides would be allowed to keep a certain limited number of restrictions in place for certain sectors where we had policies to protect, as I say, in this case, small family farms.
Well, Ambassador, let's do this. I don't have anything else to work with because there's nothing else on the table yet. So when there is, I would love to invite you back to discuss what's on the table and what it means from your perspective so that the audience can get a fair read on it as critical thinkers. Okay?
I'd like that. And, can I just say one other thing? And the president is very keen on fairness. And I understand that. It's important for the American people. But here's something I'd like to point out. Canada is your number 1 customer. And you have a trade surplus with Canada in all things.
Go ahead, Ambassador.
In all manufactured goods. In energy, we sell you more energy because it's a discounted rate, because it keeps your price of gas at the pump down, because it fuels your industry, and because your refineries take our raw product, refine it, and sell it for 3 times the price to other countries. So on the one hand, we buy more goods from you than you buy from us, and more than any other country on the planet. And on the other side, we provide affordable, reliable energy that helps fuel the U.S. economy. To me, this seems like a pretty fair relationship. If there are things that need to be discussed, let's talk about it. But let's talk about it based on the facts, based on what's really happening in this relationship.
Ambassador, I appreciate your candor and making your position known. Let's see what happens. You're always welcome here to make the case. Thank you very much. Good luck going forward.
Thanks so much.
All right, so we leave the world of facts and understanding, and now we enter Thunderdome. When we come back in 4 minutes and 35 seconds, exactly 1 year ago today, I sat down to have a conversation that many thought would never happen, starting with me, sitting down with Tucker Carlson. It was important then, and it is more important now. Why? Because everything's getting worse. We're getting more siloed. There's less conversation. So I wanted to go back down to see Tucker and talk about what's happening in this world. Nobody is more plugged into the Trump administration conceptually as well as in terms of contacts as he is. I call him the spirit animal of MAGA, because he is. We're going to be talking, we're going to start with our relative understandings of what's happening in Ukraine. Here's a taste.
I feel bad for Zelensky, but we were required to pretend that he was Jesus and that Vladimir Putin was Satan. And my only point is that's not true, actually. It's way more complicated than that.
He's on the same page.
Cuomo has built an incredible audience of people who don't view the world through the prism of left and right.
Leland Vittert picks up the story right now.
Leland Vittert, he is tone deaf to groupthink.
People are tired of being spoon-fed everything they agree with. It's boring. We're different.
A year ago today, literally, I did what you're not supposed to do. I sat down with someone the media hunts, a man often seen as an extremist. But Tucker Carlson is also a leading figure on the political right. And he's huge in digital media, and he's fundamental to MAGA. Millions of people tuned in for that conversation. Why? Because conversation is the cure. And if you're curious and a critical thinker, you want more perspective, not less. And then you'll decide. So, a year later, it's even worse now. Got in touch with Tucker, said we should do it again. Let's talk about what's on everybody's mind right now from your perspective. 3 hours, Trump, immigration, government, gender, and of course, Ukraine, okay? Very pressing issue and something where he and I really don't see the same reality.
This is something I'm very anxious for you to explain to me. I'm watching the Ukraine war. So everyone's on board. They're blue and yellow ribbons all over my neighborhood.
I was not on board at all.
Well, the country was. The Republicans were and the Democrats were. And I kept hearing, boy, you know, it's like they're kind of like us. You know, they're fighting against this oppressor and trying to shut it off so they can be their own way and get away from the kleptocracy and everything else. Now Trump comes back, and all of a sudden, all the people who are in favor of Ukraine on the right now say that it's a kleptocracy and Zelensky is a bad guy and Putin, you know, not so bad. Russia, not so bad. It's really NATO and America that has done the wrong thing here and forced Russia's hand. And Ukraine and Zelensky kind of did too, and they're really dirty, and they're stealing all our money and selling all our stuff. I don't believe any of it. You are a big purveyor of this, and I want to understand it. How did everything change this way?
Well, it changed because politicians in general, with some exceptions, but not many, have no principles at all, and they respond just to one stimulus, which is election. That's it. And if they think something will get them reelected, they'll say it, and if they don't, they won't. I've said the same thing, I think, since day one, which is this is not in our interest at all, and we've really hurt ourselves, and we've dislodged the dollar from its preeminence, and that has consequences people are not thinking through. And Russia, of course, has an interest in what happens in Ukraine, and of course they don't want American missiles on their border any more than we'd want Chinese missiles in Tijuana. Like that's of course that's a real thing. And moreover, the thing you fear most is the alignment of Russia with China, because then you unite the world's largest country, the largest nuclear arsenal, with the world's largest economy and the world's largest population, and that becomes a bloc that many others gravitate to, and that reduces you, the United States, to the bitch position very fast.
Understand, but even within that, the premise is Russia bad, China potentially bad.
What does bad even mean? I mean, like...
Russia bad means they are consistently invested in what's bad for America. Putin is a...
Well, they certainly are now. I mean, they're aligned with China. So, yeah, that was not true at the beginning of 2022. And so I would
invading Ukraine was wrong, what they did. And Ukraine did not start that war.
Well, the whole thing was wrong. No, Russia invaded Ukraine for one specific reason. Russia's concern was that Ukraine remain not part of NATO. They want to control Ukraine to some extent. It's their neighbor. The bottom line is Russia wanted a friendly government in Ukraine. Okay? I get it. The United States, which is nowhere near Russia or Ukraine, went across the Atlantic Ocean to install its president in Ukraine in a coup. Okay, I guess both are bad, but if you're being an adult about it, you understand that great powers have an interest in not having other people's nuclear weapons on their borders.
So we don't have nuclear weapons on the border. The The only nuclear weapon.
Well,
the only
really? So NATO doesn't have look
in Ukraine? No.
Okay. Their concern was...
And Ukraine used to have a lot of nukes, and they agreed to get rid of them on the basis of protection from Russia.
Those were Soviet nukes,
right.
And that was negotiated by the United States. But
right.
All I'm saying is, if you're thinking about it from the perspective of what's good for the United States, you do not want Russia becoming in close military alliance and economic alliance with China. And every administration has understood this. The Biden administration went to the Munich Security Conference in February of 2022 and had the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, say at a press conference to Zelensky, we want you in NATO. We want you to be an American satellite with American weapons in your country. She said that, knowing that was the red line. Putin's like, look, I just don't want Ukraine in NATO. You've had all these countries around my borders in NATO, but you cannot have Ukraine. It's too big. It's too important. And Putin gave a speech immediately after in Russia saying, this NATO thing is too much. We have to invade, and we're doing it. Those are the facts, okay? So the question is, why would you do that? Because we want to fight Russia. And now that is the core, the desire of the American foreign policy establishment to have a war with Russia. That does not make any sense to me.
Zelensky articulates a very different case, right? He wanted.
What's his case?
His case is he wanted America and Europe to help them fight back Russia because Russia wants to reestablish the USSR. And he wants to keep Ukraine sovereign. America was helping them with that. And now all of a sudden, Zelensky's a thief. They're stealing all our money. They're selling all our weapons to Mexican cartels. None of these things are true.
Well, that is true.
Why? No, it is not true.
Okay, I'll just go in order.
Give me the point of it, and then
Ukraine.
We can talk to
just to define sovereignty. Sovereignty is the freedom to make independent decisions. And Ukraine does not have that and has never had that since 2014 when its government was installed by an American coup.
Zelensky would say he was democratically elected.
Well, he's not democratically elected. He's passed his term.
Well,
he just put his main political opponent under indictment and froze his personal funds under internal sanctions, the security services of Ukraine.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
I don't know.
We just went through the same thing in this country.
Sounds like dictatorship,
what I'm saying
by
is,
the way.
No, but he's not a dictator. He was elected, and now, under their constitution, he does have the ability to stall elections and operate under martial law during the conflict. It's the same thing with Israel right now. They're not having elections either because they're in the midst of an active conflict. It's not a time for transition of power.
Okay, but I don't know why we make excuses for dictatorship.
It's not a dictatorship.
Of course it is. No. And to your second point, he has absolutely, as a matter of fact, the Ukrainian military has sold those weapons on the black market around the world. They've wound up in the hands of, among others, the Mexican drug cartels, the Taliban, Hamas in Gaza. Fact. And a lot of other groups.
I don't agree that those are facts.
You know what?
I'll tell you why.
I'll bet you my car that in the next year...
What kind of car is it?
Well, it was some crappy...
Oh, then I'm not going to bet that.
Okay. No, I don't have nice cars, so I'll admit that. I've never bought a new car that I know
We're not
of.
doing a swap.
Okay. But anyway, the point is... no one believes me. I know someone who bought some of the weapons.
Well, first of all, you would have to substantiate, who it is that you knew, because...
Do you believe the most corrupt country in Europe, which is so corrupt that NATO didn't want it as a member, you believe it's outside the realm of possibility that facing defeat, the leaders of that military would not sell the weapons that they're getting from the West?
You cannot substantiate a claim on the basis of mere suspicion. That because
it's not mere suspicion. I know someone who bought some of the weapons.
I believe that you think that. What I'm saying is...
I don't think that. I know it.
I'm saying that, well, you know that they say it. You don't know whether they did. And I'll tell you why I'm suspicious. Because the missiles that Russia put out those pictures of were from like 2014, and they didn't even have javelins then. Are you texting while I'm having a conversation with you?
I'm texting right now.
Very
with someone.
Rude.
No, I'm texting
rude.
On WhatsApp right now on this exact subject.
Tucker, I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying I'm disagreeing that it's a fact that the military there is spending weapons that they very much need to Mexican cartels. This is not documented stuff, and it seems to want to smear Ukraine to make them the bad guy.
It's not a matter of smearing Ukraine. Okay. This is one of those topics that I'm just going to...
I'm not mad at you.
No. I'm mad because I know this is true.
Then why hasn't it been documented?
I'm just telling you that if if this will be documented. And I got that directly, once again, from someone who purchased quite a few of those weapons, who I know personally. And it's just frustrating because I can't say beyond that.
Look, my point is not to frustrate you, Tucker. It's to understand this mentality of framing Ukraine
it's not a mentality. I'm not even blaming Zelensky directly. I'm saying this is the largest country in Europe. We have poured billions of dollars in pretty high-tech weapons systems into this country, and we're not keeping track of them.
So do you believe that we should just back out of what we're doing there now and let Russia take it?
Okay, so look, there's no question that we don't agree about a number of basics, but I'll tell you what, he made me understand where he's coming from, and he is not alone. You hear about it in major media all the time. Now, Tucker's going to answer that question. I'm not just leaving a hanging question there. That's called a tease, my brothers and sisters. And he's going to explain why Putin is getting a bad deal in the negative, and Zelensky's getting a raw deal by us being too positive. Disagreement, yes. Enemies, only if the goal is advantage and to get a bigger following. But if you want to break down division by understanding why you have a difference in the first place, conversation is the cure. And at NewsNation, that's the rule. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Coming up, Trump, uniter or divider? How do I see it? How does Tucker see it? And why is there a difference?
Whatever you think of Trump or what he does, he's basically saying the same things he was saying 25 years ago. You can pull the tape on Larry King Live about tariffs, about immigration, about foreign policy. He's basically, he's changed, of course, on a lot of little things, but on the big things, exactly the same.
The right think, like Tucker Carlson does, that Putin is misunderstood. I asked him, here's his answer.
So do you believe that we should just back out of what we're doing there now and let Russia take it?
Russia take it? I don't know. At this point, Russia has, we're not in charge. Russia just won. They beat us in their war. In case you haven't noticed, Russia outproduced in munitions NATO, including the United States, 4-1. So we just lost the war. So we are not negotiating from a position of strength. Sorry. I'm not taking Russia's side. I'm on America's side. This is terrible for us. We've exposed how weak we are. We couldn't beat Russia, which many members of the U.S. Senate assured me was, quote, a gas station with...
That was McCain's line.
What a idiot that guy was. What an idiot he was. I knew him and I liked him, but he was like an idiot. A gas station with nuclear weapons. Really? Have you
See, I saw it the other way, which is we thought Russia was going to roll over Ukraine, and they have been unable to.
They rolled over us. They took a big chunk of eastern Ukraine, and for 3 years we've progressed toward bankruptcy, trying to stop it, and we've not been able to. They won. This is bad. It's divided our country. All these dumb Ukraine people are flying foreign flags in front of their houses.
See, I feel that the division is forced in this country. That, to me, it seems pretty basic that Russia can't have Ukraine because it doesn't stop.
We can't. What are we going to do?
It doesn't stop it.
We already, but at some point.
Then it's Estonia and Latvia.
Estonia, it's always some chick, that blonde chick. I'm president of Estonia, a country of 5 million people that invented the sauna. By the way, I'm part Finnish. I'm not against Estonia. I'm sure it's great. But the idea that some woman who's never been in the armed service, like, setting military policy for the EU, we're going to do this. You can't do anything. You don't have an army. We have a nuclear armed power, largest nuclear arsenal in the world, that is fighting for its very life, that is aligned with China, which is the largest economy in the world.
I don't know that Russia's fighting for its life. I think Putin forced this situation.
Okay, whatever. Leaving aside moral culpability, I'm just saying it's a big deal for them. It's on their border. It's their border, okay? So now what are our options? Like, actually, what are our options?
The options are what President Trump is doing right now, which is to try to get the parties to the table and draw a line in the sand and make a deal. Right?
That's the only option I see. I don't see any other options, but maybe I'd love to hear what they are.
No, there's never any other option unless you want to actively fight and take territory and occupy.
Who's going to actively fight? There are no Ukrainians left.
Well, look, both sides are manpower poor, right? You know the stories about Russia emptying the prisons.
Russia has 100 million
140 million people. But
100 million more people.
But have you ever heard of us emptying out the prisons? I mean, why does he have to do that? He's in a desperate
Because
place.
he doesn't want his citizens to have to fight an unpopular war because he's worried about his popularity because he wants to stay in power.
You think Putin is concerned about his popularity in a place where he kills all of his opponents on a regular basis?
He's very concerned about his popularity.
Really? When he completely engineers the outcome of everything that happens?
Russia is a very complicated place with a lot of different competing power centers, including the FSB, which
Then how has he stayed in power so long?
Because he's really good at politics and he pays very close attention to what the public thinks.
You know how lousy life is there for people, right? Well, and not just because of the economic sanctions right now. It just has been. I mean,
have you been there recently?
Recently, no.
I've been there twice. I've been there twice in the last year.
Why are you allowed in?
I don't know. I'm an American.
Friend of Putin.
Whatever.
Friend of Putin.
Because I believe in seeing things and reaching my own conclusions.
Oh, me too. I'm not allowed in there as a journalist.
I'm sure you could call right now and they will let you in, and you should go.
They just wouldn't let me out. Wind up like Paul Whelan.
I think
and you wouldn't be arguing my case.
But look, here's the point. Putin does not have absolute control of his country, and there are all kinds of potential rivals. He's been there for
You sound more sympathetic towards him than towards Zelensky. I'm
definitely more sympathetic to Putin than Zelensky for the following reason. I'm not sympathetic to Putin in the sense that I don't want to move to Russia. I don't see Russia as like a close friend of mine at all, or a free country or anything like that. I'm just saying I think it's fair to judge leaders on how they do for their country. They have one job. Do a good job for your country. Make it better. And
you think Russia's doing well?
A lot better than Ukraine. I mean, a lot of Ukrainians have fled Ukraine to Russia. A lot.
Well, yeah, they're under siege right now.
No, but I'm just saying, like, Russia actually, for a country at war, is thriving.
You think that's true for Russia, that they don't look really weak because they couldn't roll over Ukraine?
Russia's nuclear weapons. It is hypersonic weapons. Russia could eliminate Ukraine in about 10 seconds. By the way, anybody who's trying to avoid a nuclear exchange, I'm on your side.
Yes.
And that would include almost no Republican members of the Senate, okay? They're all like full-blown. They're old. They don't care. Like I said, they don't care about their grandkids or humanity itself or whatever. They're totally willing to risk nuclear war.
Although Lindsey Graham just took a step backwards, which I thought was surprising.
It's completely silly. He's blaming... Look, a lot's going to come out. We reached an impasse on the question of whether Ukraine is selling weapons. They are.
It's not a debate. I'm just saying that it seems that the line has shifted and now Ukraine is the bad guy.
Okay, we haven't heard anything about Ukraine for the past 3 years. You were required, and I got fired over this, so I know. You were required to pretend that Zelensky, who I think is a complicated person, for whom I feel sorry, actually. I feel like he's a pawn among bigger powers, okay? I feel bad for Zelensky. But we were required to pretend that he was Jesus and that Vladimir Putin was Satan. And my only point is that's not true, actually. It's way more complicated than that. Both of them have good and bad qualities. And moreover, it's not our fight. Like, what are we doing there?
Now, listen, a lot of people share that opinion, millions and millions. Now, one of them happens to be the President of the United States. Tucker, when I call him the spirit animal of the MAGA movement, I'm not insulting him. I'm telling you he has tremendous influence and power with that constituency. So how does he see the administration to this point? How does he see President Trump? First, second week of the administration. And does he think Trump is keeping his promise to unify the country? Here's a taste.
You can't be great as a divider. There's no American figure in our history who was great because they were a divider.
If in the end it becomes Trump against the people who've wrecked our country in the permanent bureaucracies, I think that's a pretty good outcome.
For the acute treatment of migraine with or without aura in adults, Nurtec ODT can provide relief in 2 hours, which can last up to 2 days. Don't take if allergic to Nurtec ODT. Allergic reactions can occur even days after use, like trouble breathing and rash. Get help if you have trouble breathing, swelling of the face, mouth, tongue, or throat. Common side effect is nausea. When migraine takes your time, take Nurtec. Ask your doctor about Nurtec ODT.
Is President Trump the problem or the solution? That's the question. Let's get after it.
So last time we talked was a year ago. And
you somehow look younger.
I
look like my
worn out and fatter. I've been on the road. For too long. But anyway, last time we talked, I think you were still like And I probably was too, a little off balance from being vomited out of television world into the great beyond. But I was thinking about you this morning, and I was thinking, I bet he's really grateful he's not at CNN now.
So it gives me no particular joy to say this, but you were right about...
Well, okay.
I know, so don't get used to it. It's the last time you'll hear it in this conversation. But you said, give it time, embrace doing what you're doing, and don't look for the acceptance of where you were.
Yes.
And that was really good advice. It's not easy to do. It's an ugly business. It's an ugly time.
The ugliest.
All the wrong things are being rewarded, but I'm in the right place for me. Trust is at an all-time low with every kind of institution. Now, within that is a burden for the media, but also an opportunity. Most outlets have to pick a side. Tariffs, best thing in the world, like Fox News. Tariffs are great. We can't wait. This is going to be great. It's going to unleash the economy. Get rid of the income tax. MSNBC. This is the worst. It's going to crush the economy. You got to have a take. You got to have a side. NewsNation is able to harness the independent mentality of there's a plus minus on this, right? And we're going to have to see here, right? There's going to have to be some patience, right? And I love that space. It's harder. It's way harder than saying, I hate Trump or Trump was sent by Jehovah. You know, those are much easier positions. But I believe in the potential.
Well, honesty is kind of the point. I mean, I think you should be allowed to arrive at whatever conclusion you sincerely arrive at, and you should be able to tell people that that's your job. And if you work at a place where, like, you know that you can't say something you believe is true, it's the wrong place for you.
It's such a hellscape right now. Look what works in politics. If I'm running against you for anything, okay, strategy is simple. We got to destroy him. What can we find on him?
Well, actually, I think the lesson is it doesn't work because Trump is now the president.
Well, that is true. He did overcome.
Yeah, I mean, they went after his family. They tried to put his sons in jail.
He did overcome.
Put him in jail. Right, they shot him.
But he is a unicorn. Also, he is the true Teflon Don.
But it's an inspiration. Like, whatever you think of Trump or what he does, he's basically saying the same things he was saying 25 years ago. You can pull the tape on Larry King Live about tariffs, about immigration, about foreign policy. He's basically, he's changed, of course, on a lot of little things, but on the big things, exactly the same. And he just kept going, and it worked. So,
well, I think that
maybe Trump is a lesson that there are limits to what the personal attack
that's what I was going to say, is that I think that he's more of a symptom than he is a cause. The election message was, you guys are focusing on things that don't matter to us the way you want them to.
Right.
And what does matter to us doesn't matter enough to you. And what they saw in Trump were two main things. One, the personification of this, that you are trying to destroy this guy on a basis that we are not really okay with. And the second thing is that he wants to disrupt all the things that we believe need disruption. We are very divided, and we are divided in ways that I haven't experienced before.
I agree.
And I think that a big part of it is that it works. It's working for people who want power and to keep power. It's easy to play on people's outrage. But when I see the Trump administration, he came in fomenting division. And I thought it was a very tricky sell for him, because if what I hear about him is true, which is he wanted to win again because of legacy mode and be remembered as great, you can't be great as a divider. There's no American figure in our history who was great because they were a divider.
Every American leader has been a divider. Every leader is a divider by definition. Us versus them, the enemy versus the homeland. So you will divide. The question is, on what basis? And the thing that I worry most about in a country this diverse is racial division, because it doesn't go away, and those wounds just remain forever, or certainly for generations. We've seen that with slavery, which I do think has left scars. I would not deny that. It's clearly real. So anybody who foments racial division is committing a graver sin than average. And to see Trump get the support of a multiracial coalition, which he did, is the most hopeful thing ever. And so if in the end it becomes Trump against the people who've wrecked our country in the permanent bureaucracies, I think that's a pretty good outcome.
When you see what he's doing right now, you don't see him as trying to break things in order to fix them?
There's no question. There's no question. And I think you make a fair point. And in general, I am on the side of builders over destroyers because I think it's much easier that, I hate vandalism. And just on a gut level, I hate it. I believe in building and improving. But I do think in this case, and I think it's tough, and I think it's a tough balance. You can get into a frenzy of destruction where you just break things because they're there.
Do you believe directionally this administration is going the right way?
Well, I think they've identified some things that are really wrong, and in the first 6 weeks have made way more progress than I ever would have thought at fighting those things. So, but I mean, we have some very, very serious problems, and are they equal to that? If anyone is, they are. They've amazed me in the first 6 weeks, but there's a lot coming.
We're not going to agree on everything, okay? But
I know you do, because there's not one Sicilian man in America who doesn't love Trump. There's not one. And I don't believe you're that man. And I've done a survey of every Sicilian man in America, and every Sicilian man in America in his heart is like,
well,
go
finally
Trump.
Then I'm special.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. You and your brother secretly love. I know that you do. And I know that
speak for himself.
If I could X-ray your Sicilian soul, you'd be like, you go, Big Orange.
Big Orange. Yeah. What I'm saying is this. You're going to have people say, why are you talking to that guy? I'm going to have people say, why are you talking to that guy? And I love answering the question because conversation is the cure. People can listen to this and think everything that we both just said is completely a waste of the time that they spent watching it. I'm okay with that. I still know that it's part of it because, one, when we were working at two different places, we would have never been allowed to do this.
Yes.
And part of being in those places would be adversarial with each other. And you were much better at that than I was, by the way. But
I'm truly an asshole deep down.
It's not that deep. But what I'm saying is I know that we're not supposed to be doing this, and we're some of the only ones who do.
Yes.
And I appreciate you and respect you for that.
I do. He doesn't have to do this. He does not need to speak to me. The more he speaks to his own, the better for him. But this is better for us. 3 hours, all on the Chris Cuomo Project. We're going to explore fear of others tomorrow. Immigrants, trans, Elon Musk. 4 minutes and 45 seconds. We'll be right back.
Continues.
I don't think you can look at immigration as an unprecedented bad in America. It is America.
Not at this scale. Not at this scale. It's too many people.